Good day everyone, welcome back to GEC9 Rizal's Life and Work. So for today's lecture, I am going to discuss the last chapter in this subject, Jose Rizal and Philippine Nationalism, National Symbol. Alright, so let's start with Rizal's concept of nation building. When we say nation building, my dear students, it simply means the development of a nation or development of a country. And ito yung mga concept ni Rizal, paano ma-attain yung development ng Philippines. Okay? So despite political inhibitions, Rizal aimed at the restoration of his people's dignity and the recognition of their natural rights. He gained a better perspective of his country's problems. So even though hesitant ang Spanish government to provide equal rights and freedoms to the Filipinos, Dr. Rizal still wanted to regain what have been taken away to them. He was able to witness the abuses and then yung mga injustices, yung mga oppressions na ginagawa ng mga Spaniards. So Rizal conducted continuous campaign to improve the conditions of the Philippines by means of what, sir? Of course, through his political writings and ideas. Hindi na lingid sa inyong kaalaman na ang ginamit nga ni Rizal na instrumento para i-voice out yung mga injustices, yung mga maltreatment ng mga Spaniards ay yung kanyang galing sa pagsusulat. Kaya if we are going to search for an image of Dr. Rizal and Andres Bonifacio, makikita natin na madalas ang hawak lagi ni Jose Rizal ay pen and paper, okay, mga panulat. Unlike kay Andres Bonifacio na kapag sinearch niya yung picture niya sa Google, ang madalas niyang hawak ay bolo or yung itak. Okay, so Rizal proves that pen is mightier than sword. Rizal did not only use pen to fight the colonizers, but he became the pen himself, serving as the voice of the Filipinos during his time. Okay, next one. He began to understand that the prolonged subjugation of his people was caused primarily by two factors, namely the absence of national consciousness and the education of the people. Okay, so dito na-realize na ni Rizal na kaya pala tayo matagal na sakop ng colonizers. It's because of these two factors. First, lack of national consciousness. When we say national consciousness, my dear students, it means a person's awareness of the issues and happenings in his or her surroundings. Ang point dito ni Rizal, somehow, ang mga Filipinos before, wala silang kamalay-malay dun sa mga oppressions, dun sa mga injustices na ginagawa ng mga colonizers. And hindi rin gaanong aware ang mga Filipino natives noon na yung mga ini-implement na palang laws and rights ng Spanish government ay somehow bias para sa kanila. Okay, so ang pinapaboran lang noon ng laws, ng mga rights, ng mga privileges ay mga Spaniards. Second factor, the education of the Filipinos. The system of education here in the Philippines during the colonial period were controlled by colonizers. Yes, somehow, grateful tayo, thankful tayo sa Spaniards because they offered and brought education in the Philippines. Kaya lang, yung education na inoffer nila sa Philippines was mostly religion-oriented and controlled by the church. Okay, so ang pari noon, mga paring Espanyol ang nagde-decide kung ano yung ituturo nilang subject sa mga school. Okay, and ang majority dito, ang focus nila ay religion, religion, religion. Bakit religion? Kasi gusto nilang i-convert yung mga Filipino natives into Christianity. For your information, my dear students, before the arrival of the Spaniards, pagan pa ang mga Filipino natives. So kung ano-ano yung mga sinasamba nila. Sinasamba nila yung puno, sinasamba nila yung lupa, sinasamba nila yung mga tubig, and so much more. Kaya lang nung dumating na mga Spaniards, inintroduce na nila yung religion na Christianity. And bakit yun ang focus nila? Dahil gusto nilang i-convert yung mga Filipino natives into Christianity. His blueprint for nation building includes the importance of education, instilling racial pride and dignity among the people, the promotion of national consciousness, the reorientation of values and attitudes, and the willingness to sacrifice for the country. Kapag sinabi nating blueprint, my dear students, ang ibig sabihin lang nito ay plan or plano. And when we say nation building, yung na-mention ko na kanina, the development of a nation or development of a country. So kung literal nating iintindihin ito, ang plano ni Rizal para magkaroon ng development ang Philippines ay itong mga nabanggit niya. Okay, so isa-isahin natin. Number 1, importance of education. Alam nyo si Rizal, my dear students, he always considered education as a medicine or something that could cure the problems of the Philippines. So let me share one of the quotations na na-encounter ko during my high school years. Okay, so this quotation is from Nelson Mandela. Yung sabi niya na education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. O, diba? Napakaganda. And that's true. Education has the power to improve the quality of life of every individual. I know, naririnig nyo na to sa mga matatanda na lagi nilang sinasabi na mag-aral kayo ng mabuti, mag-aral kayo ng mabuti, mag-aral kayo ng mabuti. And another one, sa parents nyo, minsan maririnig nyo to na mag-aral kayo ng mabuti kasi ito yung tanging maipapamana namin sa inyo na kailanman ay hindi mananakaw ni naman. Okay? So, meron nga tayong kasabihan, di ba? Lamang ang may alam. Kapag edukado ka, hindi ka basta-bastang naloloko ng ibang tao. Okay? Number 2, instilling racial pride and dignity. So, ito naman, it's about nurturing our self-esteem and love for the Philippines. Kumbaga, binuboost dito yung ating self-confidence. Okay? Proud Pinoy, kumbaga. And then number 3, promotion of national consciousness. Okay, so i-mention ko lang din ulit yung nasabi ko kaninang definition ng national consciousness. To have awareness of the issues and happenings in our country. #may pakialam. So in order for us to attain development according kay Rizal, kailangan meron tayong pakialam sa nangyayari sa bansa natin. Okay? Number 4, reorientation of values and attitudes. Okay, so according kay Rizal naman, in order for us to move ahead or in order for us to step up as a nation, we have to reorient our values and attitudes. Baguhin natin yung mga negative values and attitudes na meron tayo. Example ng mga negative attitudes ng mga Filipinos, yung napaka-common, yung bahala na attitude. Alam nyo yun? Alam ko makarelate kayo sa bahala na attitude. Yung kapag hindi nyo na alam yung gagawin nyo sa isang bagay, ang lagi nyo sasabihin, bahala na, bahala na, bahala na. Okay? Kumbaga, sinusurrender na natin lahat. Alam nyo ba, ang word na bahala na ay na-derive kasi yan sa salitang bathala na. So, sinusurrender na natin lahat kay bathala. Okay? Pangalawang negative attitude na meron ng mga Filipinos ay yung ningas kugon. Ito naman yung mga taong excited lang sa una. Okay, halimbawa may project, napaka-excited sa unang gawin. And then pagdating na ng day 2, day 3, succeeding days na wala na yung excitement until hindi na natapos yung dapat gawin. Okay, so dapat yung mga ganitong attitude daw, baguhin natin according kay Rizal. And then next one, yung crab mentality. Okay, napaka-common nito. Ito yung mga taong ayaw nilang makakitang may achievement yung kapwa nila. Okay, kumbaga hindi sila masaya kapag may achievement na nakakamit yung kapwa nila. Okay, grab mentality. Ayaw nilang nalalamangan sila ng iba. And then, we also have manyana habit. Ito naman yung bukas na attitude. Yung mga pwede sanang tapusin ngayon, laging sasabihin, ay bukas na lang. And pagdating ng kinabukasan, instead na gawin, ay bukas na lang ulit hanggang sa hindi na natapos. Okay? So, ito yung mga negative attitudes, mga common negative attitudes ng mga Filipinos na according kay Rizal dapat baguhin. So, ang point lang ni Rizal, in order for us to attain development, kailangan natin baguhin yung mga negative attitudes na meron tayo. And the last one, willingness to sacrifice for the country. Alam nyo, when I was in third year college, yung teacher namin sa my economics, lagi kaming nire-remind na as much as possible, kapag gumraduate na daw kami, we must serve the Philippines first bago kami mag-abroad or bago namin pagsilbihan yung mga ibang lahi. And dun pa lang, it's a sign of willingness to sacrifice for the country. So, ang point ni Rizal, in order to attain development, kailangan nating mag-sacrifice para sa sarili nating bansa. Next one, Rizal look upon education as a prerequisite to the realization of a people's freedom. It is through education that people obtain knowledge of themselves as individuals and as members of a nation. Okay, so according kay Rizal, the backwardness or yung pagiging underdeveloped ng Philippines during the time of Spaniards was not because of Filipinos' indifference and indolence. Hindi dahil sa pagiging kakaiba ng mga Pinoy, hindi dahil sa pagiging tamad ng mga Pinoy, but rather, it's the neglect of the Spanish authorities in the Philippines, yung pagiging walang pakialam ng Spanish government sa mga colonies. For Rizal, the mission of education is to elevate, okay, i-uplift yung status ng isang bansa. Since education is a prerequisite for social progress, Rizal claimed that only through education could the country be saved from domination or being controlled. Kapag daw edukado ka, hindi ka basta-bastang maluloko, hindi ka basta-bastang makokontrol ng ibang tao. That's why Rizal insisted educating Filipino people so that they may successfully eradicate the wrongdoings in the country. The long period of colonial domination and the constant humiliations and discrimination experienced by the Filipino people from their colonial masters produced a feeling of inferiority and a lack of racial pride and dignity. Alright, so these are some of the many negative impacts done by the Spaniards dahil sa mga discrimination and humiliation or yung pamamahiya na na-experience ng mga Filipinos from the Spaniards. Bumaba ngayon yung self-confidence nila, yung dignity nila, yung self-respect nila sa pagiging isang Filipino. Kung naalala nyo yung discussion natin dun sa The Indolence of the Filipino People, isa sa mga factors na na-mention ni Rizal kung bakit may tendency na maging tamad ang mga Pilipino ay yung feeling of inferiority, yung ang baba ng tingin nila sa lahi nila bilang isang Pinoy. And dahil yun sa mga colonizers. Kumbaga, ang mindset na ng mga Filipinos noon, oops, hanggang dito na lang kami, hindi na namin kayang malagpasan yung mga kayang gawin ng mga colonizers. Kumbaga, nag-set na sila ng boundary. Okay? Next one, he wanted his people to dedicate their thoughts, words, and actions not solely to themselves as individuals, but to themselves as citizens of a nation. Okay, so this is what I've mentioned to you a while ago, na according kay Rizal, in order for us to attain development, we must reorient our values and attitudes. Baguhin natin yung mga pangit na attitudes and values na meron tayo. Okay, so i-relate natin sa panahon na nangyayari ngayon. Dumadami ang cases ng COVID-19 sa Philippines. Bakit? Dahil sa disiplina. Pag sinabi ng government, walang lalabas, walang magkakandak ng mass gathering, anong ginagawa ng iba? Hindi sumusunod. Tignan nyo, meron bang development sa Philippines ngayon when it comes to the number of COVID-19 cases? Bumababa ba? Di ba hindi? Mas lalong dumadami. Okay? So isa yan sa pinupunan ni Rizal, attitude, values ng mga Pinoy. Baguhin in order for us to attain development. Okay, next one. Rizal emphasized that the task of nation building is accompanied by hardships and sufferings, which the people must inevitably experience to bolster their courage. The paramount problem during Rizal's time was the development of a national consciousness. It was important that the people realize the miserable facts of their existence, the cause of their oppression, and the sacrifices they must endure to be freed from colonial domination. Okay, so grabe naman si Rizal sa part na to. I could not agree more. Very well said. I know you would also agree. I-relate natin sa day-to-day experience natin ito, my dear students. I know this may sound corny to you, pero alam nyo, yung hardships, yung paghihirap, yung struggles, yung pagdurusa na na-experience natin, diba? Ito yung nagiging reason kung bakit mas nagiging strong tayo lalo. So according kay Rizal, the sacrifices experienced by people strengthen them even more, and they have to endure it. Kailangan nating tiisin. You know, suffering is part of human life, my dear students. That is why it's so important to understand that your hardships can and will make you a better person. You will emerge stronger and happier than you ever imagined. Okay, so now let's move on to Rizal's program of action. So ito naman yung mga plano ni Rizal na eventually na-accomplish niya. So number 1, organize a group of Filipino students in Madrid that would use their varied talents to work for solutions to the Philippine problems. So dito na papasok yung Sirkulo Hispano-Filipino na na-establish sa Spain. Bakit siya tinawag na Hispano-Filipino? Because it's a group founded by Filipinos and Spaniards. Yung Hispano doon, ibig sabihin nun mga Espanyol. And then yung mga Filipino, of course, mga Pinoy yan. And it's an organization na humihingi din ng reforms in the Spanish government. So same lang din siya dun sa purpose, sa aims ng La Solidaridad at saka ng La Liga Filipina. Humihingi sila ng pagbabago sa government of Spain. Okay? And then nagkaroon din sila ng newspaper. Ito na yung Revista del Círculo Hispano-Filipino. Kung yung La Solidaridad, ang name ng newspaper nila ay same lang din nung organization, La Solidaridad, and then yung Katipunan, ang name ng newspaper nila, Kalayaan. Etong Sirkulo Hispano-Filipino, ang name ng newspaper nila, Revista del Círculo Hispano-Filipino. And ano ang aims nila? To address to the government of Spain the abuses and harsh treatment being done to the Philippines, and of course, yung mga changes, yung mga reforms na gusto nilang hingin or ma-attain sa Spanish government. Kaya lang, same reasons dun sa mga naunang organizations, di ba, na La Solidaridad, Katipunan, hindi nagtatagal. Why? Because lack of leadership. Laging nagtatalo kung sino ang mamumuno, kung sino ang masusunod. And then yung mga newspaper nila, hindi rin nagtatagal. Why? Lack of budget, lack of money. Kinukulang sila sa pera. Okay? Number 2, propose writing a book similar to Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin and Eugene Sue's The Wandering Jew, which would deal with the various aspects of Filipino life. The book would be the project of the Círculo Hispano-Filipino, with each member contributing a chapter. This book was entitled Noli Me Tangere. Okay, I know you are now familiar with Noli Me Tangere since na-discuss na natin siya in the previous term. So balikan lang natin, i-recall lang natin yung story. One of the inspirations of Rizal when he wrote the book Noli Me Tangere was the novel Uncle Tom's Cabin. This is a novel about slavery. Yung mga white American people, binebenta nila, ginagawa nilang slaves yung mga black American. And same with the story of the wandering Jew na about maltreatment din. So nung nabasa ni Rizal yung mga books na to, na-inspire siya na magsulat din since na-realize niya na somehow may pagkakatulad yung story ng the Uncle Tom's Cabin at the wandering Jew sa conditions ng Philippines wherein ginagawang slaves yung mga Filipino natives. Supposedly, the book Noli Me Tangere was a collaborative work with the members of Círculo Hispano-Filipino. Yun nga lang, ang gusto kasing mangyari nitong ibang members ng Círculo Hispano-Filipino ay magsulat ng libro about kababaihan. Okay? And ngayon, ang gusto naman ni Rizal, libro na tatalakay sa conditions ng Philippines. So, hindi na sila nagkasundo. Ngayon, sinolo na lang ni Rizal na isulat yung Noli Me Tangere. Okay? Next one, from the records in the vast Filipiniana collection of the British Museum, Rizal had pieced together the past history of the Philippines, which revealed that even before the coming of the Spaniards, the Filipinos already had a developed culture. And of these records, he chose to annonate Morga's Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas. So, napakaraming S. Okay, so it's true, bago pa dumating ang mga Spaniards sa Philippines, meron na tayong developed culture, meron na tayong sariling tradition, meron na tayong sistema ng pagsusulat, meron na rin tayong established government, at yan yung dato ang namumuno. And then, ito namang Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas, kapag tin-translate kasi natin itong libro na to, ang ibig sabihin niya ay events in the Philippine Islands or yung mga nangyari sa Philippines. Ang Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas ay libro na gawa ni Antonio Morga. Sir, anong content ng book na to? Ang content ng book ni Morga, it's all about his personal experience and other documentations nung pumunta siya dito sa Philippines. Kumbaga, ito yung kanyang naging personal diary. Nilalagay niya rito, sinusulat niya lahat ng mga nakikita niya, yung mga nadidiscover niya, yung mga na-experience niya sa Philippines. And then, Rizal was impressed. Natuwa si Rizal, ang ginawa niya, he decided to annonate it. So, ibig sabihin ng annonate or annotation, nagbigay siya ng comment and then in-explain niya yung mga informations na sinulat ni Morga dun sa Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas. Okay? Number 4, he wrote The Indolence of the Filipinos, which came out as a series of articles in La Solidaridad from July 15 to September 15, 1899. Okay, so recently lang natin na-discuss yung The Indolence of the Filipinos. Diba? It's essay na gawa mismo ni Rizal. It represents Rizal's defense of the Filipinos to Spaniards. Tamad ba ang mga Pilipino? Yan yung question na sinagot ni Rizal sa kanyang article na The Indolence of the Filipinos. Okay? Because, nasabi ko kanina, it's a sort of defense. Depensa ni Rizal dahil nga sinabihan tayo ng mga Spaniards na tamad daw ang mga Pilipino. So, sa essay na to, nilagay niya, sinabi niya yung mga factors, yung mga reasons kung bakit hindi tamad ang mga Pinoy. At the same time, diniscuss niya rin dito yung mga factors kung bakit may tendency na maging tamad ang isang Pilipino. Okay? Actually, sa lahat ng literary works na na-discuss natin from prelim to final, ito yung pinaka-nagustuhan ko, yung The Indolence of the Filipinos. Okay? Gustong-gusto ko yung pagdepensa ni Rizal, yung pag-reason out niya sa Spaniards. Kumbaga, on point lahat ng sinabi niya. Next one, feared the possibility of the Filipinos resort to arms as a desperate means to fight. He wrote El Filibusterismo to show his countrymen the price they should be willing to pay and the problems they would have solved first before plunging the country to revolution. Okay, so this is about the idea of Rizal on how to gain the independence of the Philippines from the Spaniards. As you all know now, since paulit-ulit kong sinasabi sa mga lectures, siguro gasgas na to sa tenga ninyo, na hindi nga talaga in favor si Rizal sa pagkakaroon ng revolution sa Philippines. One of his motives when he wrote the El Filibusterismo filibusterismo is to influence the minds of the Filipinos na hindi nga talaga revolution ang solusyon para makamit natin yung kalayaan ng Pilipinas. However, he did not succeed. Why? Nagkaroon pa rin tayo ng revolution. Okay? Nagkaroon ng katipunan na ang aim nila ay magkaroon ng revolution to gain the independence of the Philippines. So, bakit naman el filibusterismo? Remember the story of el filibusterismo, yung main character natin, si Simon, di ba gusto niya magkaroon ng revolution para lumaya ang mga Pilipino sa pamamahala ng Espanya. Yun nga lang, lahat ng plano niya ay hindi naging successful. Ano ba yung una niyang plano? Atakihin lahat ng government offices sa Manila. Ang nakalimutan niya magbigay ng signal dun sa other members ng kanyang organization or nung kanyang grupo. Why? Kasi nga, narinig niya yung balita na patay na pala si Maria Clara. So, nabalisa siya, nakalimutan niya magbigay ng signal. So, palpak yung una niyang plano. Yung pangalawa niyang plano, dun sa wedding reception, yung pagbigay niya ng regalo, yung lampara na merong bomba sa loob, hindi rin natuloy kasi nalaman din ng mga tao na nandun. Okay? So, ang point lang dito ni Rizal, hindi dapat revolution ang gamitin ng mga Pilipino to attain the independence of the Philippines. Kasi ito yung kahihinatnan. Kung ano yung nangyari sa El Fili, which is hindi naman nagtagumpay si Simon, ganun din ang mangyayari sa mga Filipinos. Okay? Kumbaga nire-relate niya kung ano yung pwedeng mangyari, kung ano yung possible na maging resulta ng pagkakaroon ng revolution. Next one, he thought of showing the people how to organize themselves into a compact, homogeneous body in the Philippines. Rizal's major plan of organization was the establishment of La Liga Filipina or the Philippine League. Okay, so ito katatapos lang natin madiscuss last meeting sa chapter 9. Dito naman sa La Liga Filipina, it's an organization na si Rizal mismo ang founder. Unfortunately, 3 days lang after its establishment, inaresto na agad si Rizal. Ito yung time na dinala na siya sa may dapitan sa Zamboanga. Sabi ko nga, kung merong mang unique organization na to, this organization allowed the involvement of the ordinary Filipino people in the reform movement. Kahit sinong Filipino, regardless of your social status in life, pwede kang sumali. Kaya nga pati si Andres Bonifacio, na hindi rin naman nakapagtapos ng pag-aaral, ay napasali sa La Liga Filipina. Unlike dun sa ibang organizations kasi na exclusively lang siya dun sa mga educated people or dun sa mga ilustrado. Okay, kumbaga itong La Liga Filipina ay bukas para sa lahat. When he was deported to Dapitan, he had already accomplished a major part of a self-imposed mission of redeeming the Filipinos from medieval colonialism. His exile demonstrated the hero's untiring efforts at continuing the program of action that he relentlessly pursued for the realization of his blueprint of nation building. Okay, so nung pinatapon si Rizal sa may Dapitan, Zamboanga, he had maximized his stay in that province. Okay, so naging productive siya. Imagine 4 years siyang mag-i-stay sa Dapitan, so wala rin siyang choice. Kailangan niya maging productive. Kailangan meron siyang gawin. So doon na nai-practice niya yung kanyang pagiging doctor, which is alam naman na natin na si Rizal nga ay isang doctor. Okay? So, nagpatayo siya ron ng maliit na clinic since ang Dapitan ay liblib na lugar sa may Zamboanga. Wala silang access sa hospital. So, ang ginawa ngayon ni Rizal, nagpatayo siya ng maliit na clinic and then gumagamot siya ng mga may sakit. And then, naging engineer din si Rizal. Naging teacher. Actually, nagpatayo pa si Rizal ng school dun sa may Dapitan. And then, wala siyang hinihinging bayad sa mga students. And okay lang naman sa kanya kung mayroong magbabayad, pero kung wala naman, okay lang din. Ang kapalit lang nun, kailangan nilang tumulong sa paglilinis doon sa school. And then, naging farmer din si Rizal, naging inventor, naging artist. Alam nyo na rin na si Rizal nga ay magaling sa drawing, magaling siya sa arts, and of course, naging businessman din si Rizal sa Dapitan. So, doon pa lang, sa 4 years na pagstay niya sa Zamboanga, marami na siyang na-accomplish. Actually, yung punishment nga sa kanya na exile or ipatapon sa far-flung area or sa malayong lugar, parang hindi niya rin na-feel na bilanggo siya because may freedom siya dun. Diba? Saan ka makakita ng bilanggo na nasa labas? Okay, may freedom siya, may laya siyang gawin yung mga gusto niyang gawin. So, never siyang naka-feel ng lungkot nung nasa Dapitan siya. Actually, nung aalis na nga siya ng Dapitan, ang nalungkot pa dun, yung mga taga-Dapitan, ayaw siyang paalisin. Okay? Okay, so now let's move on to Rizal's program of reforms. The nationalism he taught his people did not end with the attainment of independence. He looked beyond independence to the progressive development of a new nation in politics, economics, technology, and education. His writings conveyed concepts that are applicable for all time, especially to the present, in all major areas of political, socio-economic, and educational reforms, and his moral teachings and principles convey the essence of national awareness. So, okay, in this portion naman, it's all about the teachings of Rizal na somehow related pa rin sa conditions and issues na nangyayari sa Philippines. Okay? So, ano ba yung mga pwede nating matutunan sa subject na Rizal? Okay? So, first, of course, we can develop an appreciation and deeper understanding of all his sacrifices. And actually, hindi lang naman si Rizal. Pwede rin namang makapag-develop tayo ng appreciation and understanding dun sa sacrifices ng iba pang Filipino heroes. As young adults, you are given the responsibility of governing our country's future. So later on, if ever na gusto nyong pagsilbihan ng Philippines, pwede kayong mag-run sa government, diba? Pwede kayong tumakbo sa halalan. Since ang paniniwala nga ni Rizal, nasa kabataan ang pag-asa ng bayan at kayo ay part na ng kabataan. Okay? And another thing na pwede nating matutunan sa pag-aaral sa buhay ni Rizal ay yung pagiging aware sa nangyayari sa paligid natin. Okay? Being aware of what goes on in our country. Hindi pwedeng wala tayong pakialam. Dapat meron tayong alam sa mga issues, sa mga problema na nangyayari sa Pilipinas. And of course, ang pinaka-importante sa lahat na pwede nating matutunan ay yung hindi pagtanggap sa mga injustices na nare-receive natin. Okay? So, kung feeling nyo, minamaltrato kayo, kung feeling nyo, kayo ay naaapuso, matuto kayong lumaban just like Rizal. Okay? And other Filipino heroes na nag-sacrifice ng buhay nila just to fight for their rights and regain the independence of the Philippines. Matuto tayong lumaban. Okay? Huwag tayong magpapaabuso sa ibang tao. Yun ang mga pwede nating matutunan sa pag-aaral sa buhay ni Rizal. Okay, so now let's move on to the political and economic reforms. According to Jose Rizal, governments are established for the welfare of the people. He wanted to inflict the following rights. Number 1, Magna Carta protecting the life, liberty, and property of Filipinos. So when we say Magna Carta, my dear students, it's a document that consists rights and privileges of people. So sa madaling sabi, isang dokumento na nagpoprotekta sa life, liberty, and property of Filipinos. So yun lang ang point sa number 1. Number 2, ito paulit-ulit ko nang nadidiscuss sa mga discussions. Restoration of Filipino representation in the Spanish Cortes or Spanish Court. Dati naman kasi, meron tayong Filipino representative sa Spanish Court. Kaya lang, noong 1837, uulitin ko, na-abolish ito at hindi na na-restore, hindi na naibalik. Number 3, freedom of the press, of association, of religion, and equality before the law. So, napaka-understandable. Kalayaan na ihayag or i-voice out yung mga problema, yung mga hinaing ng tao na hindi sila natatakot, na hindi sila sinasaktan ng gobyerno. Next, yung freedom of association. Ito naman yung kalayaan na bumuo ng mga grupo, okay, ng association, ng organization. And then freedom of religion, kalayaan mamili ng relihiyon, and of course, equality before the law. Dapat ang batas ay para sa lahat. Dapat walang kinikilingan. Okay? Number 4, freedom assimilation of the Philippines. So ito na yung nasabi ko sa may last chapter, yung aim ng propaganda movement. They called for the assimilation of the Philippines as a province of Spain. Para daw kung ano yung batas, yung laws na ini-implement sa Spain, yun na rin yung ibibigay sa mga Pilipino. Kasi nga, ang gusto lang nila ay maging probinsya ng Espanya ang Pilipinas. Okay? Unlike sa Katipunan na they are asking for the total independence of the Philippines from the Spaniards. Educational reform. Rizal insisted that education is necessary condition to a free society. Education should liberate Filipinos from ignorance because education is an important ingredient in the task of nation building. He believed in education that is free from political and religious control. He asserted that reform cannot be achieved if there is no suitable liberal education. So Rizal really recognized the importance of education in the development of a country and its people. Napakahalaga ng education para kay Rizal. Kaya nga ito yung ina-advocate niya. Gaya nung nasabi ko kanina, he always considered education as a medicine or something that could cure the problems of the Philippines. And he also believed in education that is free from political and religious control. So dapat ang education daw walang control or walang pakialam ang politics, at the same time, walang intervention ang religion. Okay, so ito naman ay part ng midterm lesson natin. He left the UST to pursue his studies at the Madrid Central University, which was in conformity with the ideas of Father Jose Burgos, one of the three martyred priests of 1872. Father Burgos strongly advocated that Filipinos should study abroad because overseas education was considered an essential step to achieving reform. And this thinking he shared with his only brother, Pasiano Rizal. Okay, this is true. Paano ba natin i-describe yung system of education during the time of Rizal, nung time na nag-aaral siya? The system of education is nothing more than repetitive prayer. More on religion ang fino-focus nilang ituro. The system of education is actually very repressive. Walang academic freedom ang mga students, very backward yung progress. And at the same time, ito talaga yung nag-exist nung time na to. Merong racial discrimination between Filipino and Spanish students. That's why, majority of Filipinos before, if meron silang opportunity and privilege na mag-aral, mas prefer nila na mag-aral sa Europe. And just like Rizal, doon rin siya nag-aral sa Europe. Na-influence sila sa idea ni Father Burgos na mas okay nga ang system of education sa ibang bansa. And alam nyo naman na, since na-discuss na natin ito nung midterm, na hindi nga alam ng parents ni Rizal na pumunta pala siya sa Europe para maituloy yung kanyang pag-aaral. Okay, ang nakakaalam lang nun ay yung kuya niya na si Pasiano. He wrote in 1890, which described the education of the masses under the Spanish regime. Rizal said the education of the Filipinos from birth until the grave is brutalizing, depressing, and anti-human. It is through this scenario that we could better understand why Rizal was asking for a different education, a new idea of teaching the Filipino youth. Rizal believed that even modest education, no matter how rudimentary it might be, if it's the right education for the people, the result would be enough to awaken their ideas of perfection and progress, and eventually, change would follow. So, ang point dito ni Rizal, kahit ordinary education lang yan, gaano man yan ka-basic, if it's the right education for the people, sapat na yun to awaken their minds and positive things would follow. Okay? Okay, so now let's move on with the requirements of Rizal in his own idea or own concept of education. So number 1, the curriculum of a modern liberal education should include either religion, hygiene, mathematics, natural and social sciences, literature, languages, physical culture, and the arts. So basically speaking, ang point lang dito ni Rizal, dapat mai-offer itong mga subjects na to sa school at maituro sa mga students. Hindi naman necessary na lahat ito ay maituro or mai-offer, kahit ilan lang sana sa mga ito. Number 2, there should be a weekly accounting by teachers of student progress and conduct. The well-behaved ones to be rewarded with a posting of their names, and parents should be informed monthly of the progress, conduct, and health of their children. So itong number 2 naman, it's all about the feedbacking. Yung feedbacking ni teacher sa parents at the same time dun sa mga students. Remember, nung elementary and high school, di ba? Every grading, pagkatapos ng grading, first grading, second grading, third grading, fourth grading, nagkakaroon yan ng meeting. So pinapakita ni teacher sa parents yung card nung student, at the same time nakikita ni student yung kanyang grades para ma-determine kung nag-perform ba siya ng mabuti or meron bang progress or nag-excel ba siya sa klase. Okay, and another thing to motivate the students, kailangang pinopost din ni teacher sa board kung sino talaga yung deserving na magkaroon ng award. Diba minsan pinopost kung sino yung top 10, and that's one of the ways to motivate the students. Number 3, the school should insist on accuracy and punctuality. So yung number 3 naman, it's all about the good and bad behavior. At the same time, yung punctuality, yung pagpasok on time sa school at hindi nalilate. Okay, so more on behavior naman yung number 3. Number 4, teachers to be employed must pass admission examination on a competitive basis if there are several applicants. So, ang point naman sa number 4, dapat masala daw kung sino yung deserving sa teaching position. And actually, lahat naman ng schools, kapag nag-hire sila yan ng employee, ng teachers, laging merong exam. Same with our school, MCNP ISAP. Nag-exam din ako bago ako nakapasok dyan. Okay, number 5, there is to be no racial discrimination in the admission of students. So, ito naman, hashtag education for all. Dapat walang discrimination sa mga schools. Kung sino yung gustong mag-enroll, sino yung gusto mag-aral sa school nila, tanggapin nila. That's why sa Philippines, tumatanggap din tayo ng mga foreigner students, di ba? Minsan, makakakita kayo na may mga Chinese students sa Philippines, merong mga Indian students, and so much more. Okay, education for all. Number 6, hindi ko alam kung bakit napasali to sa requirements ni Rizal. Okay, I have to admit, hindi ako marunong dito at hindi to in-offer sa school namin before. Number 6, gymnastics and swimming are obligatory. Okay, so obligatory pala ito. So, advantage nyo na kung marunong kayo sa dalawang ito. Number 7, classes would be 6 hours a day including a total of 2 hours of physical culture and the arts. So, ito naman, it talks about the oras, okay, yung time na pagstay ni student sa school. 'Di ba usually nga nung elementary and high school, 8 hours tayo nag-stay sa school, tama? Papasok tayo before 7 and then umuwi na tayo ng 4 or di kaya 4:30. Okay? Kung isipin, mas mahaba pa yung time ng students with the teacher kaysa sa parents sila or sa family nila. Why? Kasi pag uwi ng student, kakain na lang yan, magpapahinga and then matutulog. Okay? Wala nang bonding na nangyayari. Okay, kaya minsan, mas mahaba pa yung time ni teacher na kasama si student. Number 8, human relations between teachers and pupils should not be ignored. The teacher should work with the students and be their leader and co-workers as well as their mentor. So, ang point lang ng number 5, yung relationship between teacher and student. So, ang role dito ni teacher is to guide and facilitate the learnings of the student. Okay? Kung may concern si student, kung meron siyang problema, ang role ni teacher i-guide ngayon si student. Okay? Actually, ang role nga ng teachers, di ba, tumatayo silang second parent ng mga estudyante. Okay? Number 9, instruction should be practical and should stimulate thinking rather than be a parrot-like reproduction of book learning. Students should learn by participation in a natural situation. So, ang point sa number 9, hindi lang dapat nagre-rely ang learning sa low-level thinking of skills. Hindi lang memorize. Okay? Hindi lang dapat kinakabisado kung ano yung nasa content ng book. Dapat alam din ng mga students kung paano i-apply sa totoong buhay yung natutunan nila. Okay, for example, 'di ba, sa mga different courses naman meron tayong tinatawag na on-the-job training or yung OJT natin. Kung ano yung natutunan natin dun sa mga inaral natin, 'di ba, ina-apply na natin sa OJT. Number 10, education should receive substantial aid to make instruction effective. It is not sufficient that there are students to be taught. So, ang point lang ng number 10, it's about the aid or yung tulong na binibigay sa education. So, dapat yung classroom, conducive siya for learning. At the same time, kompleto yung materials na ginagamit sa loob ng classroom para ma-make sure na merong learnings at matuto talaga ang mga students. And also, dapat may budget ang government na nakalaan para sa education. Okay? Number 11, the last one. The teacher should have prestige, reputation, moral strength, and some freedom of action on socio-economic reforms. Okay, ito namang number 11, this is all about the teacher's authority. Okay? So, itong 11 na na-mention ko, these are the requirements of Rizal about his concept of education. Okay, so that ends our lecture for chapter 10 and that ends our subject, Rizal's life and work. So thank you, my dear students, for listening to all my recorded discussion and thank you for attending my virtual class. I had so much fun being your teacher, being your mentor, and also your second family. All the best for your brightest future. So padayon, keep going, magpatuloy kayo, kayang-kaya nyo yan. Maraming salamat. Again, this is Sir Marvin, finally signing off as your instructor in Rizal's life and works. Goodbye!